Good morning. Well, good morning for me. Good afternoon for you guys. I'm in Illinois, so it's noon for me. But thank you for having me, and I'm happy to talk to you today about being a veterinary toxicologist. Some about me, how did I become a toxicologist, and then just what do I do as a toxicologist. So let's get started. So this is who I am. So this is me when I was an intern, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after an overnight shift. So pretty typical of how I would look after most days here. But I'm a veterinarian. I'm also a board certified toxicologist. I got board certified just last year. I work for the ASPCA Animal Poison Control Center as a toxicologist. And then, on my personal side, I live in Illinois with my partner. We have 3 cats, Matt Damon, Lieutenant Dan, and Stuart, and we have a Brussels Griffon named Tyrion. And then I'm really into Pokemon Go is my big hobby, and I also teach Zumba. So that's a little bit about me. And then how did I get to be where I am? So it was kind of a winding path. I guess I can say I didn't start out planning to be a toxicologist. It kind of ended up that way. So I guess there's probably a good message there that you don't always know what you're going to do when you're, getting into vet school, going to vet school and after. So when I was in vet school, I actually wanted to be a zoo veterinarian, and I had kind of tracked myself towards that. And then it ended up here as a toxicologist. So I did go to undergrad in Oklahoma State, where I'm from. I got a BS in animal science. And then I went to vet school also in Oklahoma State, graduated in 2007, and then went ahead and did an internship in Washington, D.C. for a year. And it was, basically a emergency GP, surgery, some specialties in there, cardiology, internal medicine, neurology. It's kind of a good, broad, general internship, but mostly was emergency. And that kind of got me interested in more of emergency medicine and kind of switched my track from zoo to emergency. It was also, getting into zoo medicine and being a board certified zoo specialist, it's a pretty steep path to get into that. And so at that point, I was kind of tired of doing all the internships in school. I kind of wanted just to have a job. And so I decided to, after my internship, just go into practice. And so I started out in Chicago, and I took my first ER job, and I was there for 3-4 years. Got a lot of good experience. Got to then teach some interns myself, and just had a really good run there. And then I moved to Indiana, and I stayed with the ER. I also did some GP kind of part-time on the side, so I kind of got my hands into both worlds there. And I did that for about 7-8 years. And then I decided that I would like to have kind of a better work-life balance. I was working a lot of 14, 16, 18-hour ER shifts, overnight shifts. But I kind of wanted to get into a more balanced career. And so I decided to make the move to come work for poison control. As the ER vet, I had always spoken with them on the phone, and I kind of knew what they were about and saw that they were hiring. So I was like, you know what, I want to go do that job. And so in 2018, I moved here to Illinois and started working for poison control. And then last year, after I had been here for a few years, I went ahead and had enough qualifications to go ahead and sit for the board toxicology exam. So I did that, and then I passed that this past year. So now I'm board certified toxicologist. And then I am working on becoming a board certified veterinary toxicologist. So the two are separate and different. So I'll talk about that here in a second. But yeah, that's my next goal. I want to be double boarded. And it's nice that my job here kind of affords me to be able to do that and meet the qualifications to do both of those things. So that's really nice. So what do I do here at the Poison Control Center? So you probably know this, but we're a 24-hour hotline. And so we take calls from the pet owners, the public, vet clinics as well. We have a public line where the owners kind of call into, and then we have a vet line where vet clinics and professionals can call into and just get help for any kind of toxicology case. It can be medications, plants. We get all kinds of calls. And in a minute here, I'll show you just some examples of stuff that we get frequent calls about. But yeah, so we're 24 hours. We're always here. We're always happy to help. We have lots of good resources at our fingers we can share with anybody who needs help for this. So definitely is it's very interesting. Every call is different. That's what I kind of like about it. It's always interesting and it's never the same. I've gotten calls about dogs, cats, snakes. I even talked to a zoo about a sea lion once. So it's definitely interesting, and I get maybe a little bit of the zoo aspect that I was trying for when I first wanted to be a vet. But generally it's something that I find exciting. I'm glad that that I made this switch. It's been very rewarding for me, and I did find a better work-life balance for me. I work days. I don't have to work a lot of overnights. There are some, but it's generally a better, shorter shift. So definitely something that was a good move for me. And then just some information about the Poison Control Center. So as of this year, we have 70 vets that work here, 96 vet techs, and 11 vet assistants. We answer a lot of calls, about 400,000 calls every year about poisonings. And then, so the really neat thing about it is that we have a database of all of our cases where we have all this information from 40 years of cases saved. And so if we need to look something up, if it's a very unusual medication we don't have a lot of information on, we can say, oh, let me look through our database, see how many animals ate this in our past history, see what happened, see what dose things happened at. So we have a lot of good information at our fingertips, just to kind of help decide what to do, especially in cases where we don't have a lot of information. So that's really helpful. And this is, something that has been helpful to figure things out. Like recently, one of our vets here figured out what may be toxic about grapes and raisins, by looking through our cases, looking through similar cases. So it's something that's really, really neat. And it's very, very beneficial, I think, to the toxicology field. So I enjoyed having that part of the job here as well. So this is kind of some typical things that we get calls about. This was our top 10 last year of our most frequent calls. So over-the-counter medications, always going to be pretty much at the top of the list. Things like ibuprofen, Tylenol, just very, very, very common. Food, tons of people have their pets get into the trash. They're out on a walk and they just grab somebody's cupcake. It's just very, very, very common, as you guys know, I'm sure. Prescription medications, super, super common. Dogs like to get into pill minders and eat a week's worth of pills at a time. So we have to sort out what that's going to cost, how they interact, if the dog's going to need medication. So it's definitely something we get lots of calls on. Next, we have chocolate. I think I used to be more towards the top of the list, but I don't think it will ever leave the top 10 list. It's super, super, super common, as that picture shows there. We do get a lot of calls about plants. Some of those calls are, even like livestock, horses, maybe not your typical dog and cat calls, getting into plants that are, out in their field, or like a herd of sheep may have some deaths to figure out, are they eating a bad plant? That's interesting. Household toxins, are things like cleaners, disinfectants, lots of those calls, especially with COVID and the pandemic. We got a lot more people at home with their pet cleaning, they're getting into all their wipes, their masks, things like that. Veterinary products are also common. So dogs like to get into their bottles of Rimadyl or their own medications. Sometimes we'll have a dog, we'll grab their other dog's pill pocket with their medications in it. So that lots of that. Rat bait is super, super common. So we get lots of calls on that. Sometimes we don't know what kind of bait it is. And so we kind of have to treat for all the possibilities, but that's always super common. Insecticides is also common, especially as we're getting more into the spring and summer. The people are spraying stuff, having their pest control company come out and spray stuff. So deal with a lot of those kind of calls. And then number 10 was new this year on the list, recreational drugs. And so we're talking about things like marijuana. We get calls about, cocaine, fentanyl, all kinds of illicit substances that dogs still get into. I think with the rise of legalized marijuana and CBD and all that stuff, we're getting a lot of calls about that. So super, super, super common. But yeah, in any given shift, this is probably will deal with everything on this list and then some. So as far as how to become a board certified toxicologist, there are a couple ways. And so the first way is to be boarded by the American Board of Toxicology, which is the ABT designation. This one is not just for vets. Anybody can do this board certification. I think there are some techs that are working here that are going to try to pursue this, so they'll also be toxicologists if they are able to do that. So you can you're eligible for this if you've been, you had your DVM and you have 3 years of experience in tox. If you have a master's degree or 7 years of experience with tox, or if you have a bachelor's degree plus 10 years of experience. So a lot of our vet techs fit in that category. You have to be working as a full-time toxicology work within the year prior to you applying. And then you have to pass the board exam. So that's what I did this last October. It's I think it was 160 questions, it's a 4-hour exam. I took it at a remote computer center. And then if you wanted more information about just the general requirements and everything about them, there's their website there, abtox.org. And they have lots of information about how to apply and what the requirements are and just what they do. So there's information there if you'd like to look at that. And then the second way you can be boarded is through the American Board of Veterinary Toxicology, or ABVT. And this is, just for vets only. So if you do both of these, you can be double boarded, or you can do one or the other. In order to be eligible for ABVT, you have to have 4 years of tox experience. So, your DVM plus a master's or a PhD, and 2 of those have to be under a board certified toxicologist. And you have to write 2 papers and do 2 research projects. Or you can have 2 years of just general practice experience plus 3 years of toxicology experience, and then write 2 papers or have 2 projects. You can also do it with just experience. There's really not a specification on the number of years, but the board kind of decides on, how applicable your experience is and if it qualifies for them. Plus you have to write 5 papers and do 5 research projects. Or you get eligible if you have passed the ABT exams. So a lot of people will do that. Some people, if they're not in a situation where they're writing a lot of papers, you can just pass the ABT board exams and then you can take the ABVT exam. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I haven't written any papers. I should. I would like to. That's in my plan for here, but for right now, I passed the ABT board, so I'm going to be able to sit for the ABVT boards. And those happen once a year in July. And so I'll be taking that hopefully July or next year. So the exam for ABVT has 4 sections. And if you pass one, but not all, or you pass 2, you don't have to repeat the ones that you pass, but you do have to repeat the ones that you don't pass. So you can have, multiple tries at it if you need to. And, the exam includes things like toxic plants, drugs, just the toxicology concepts like dose response curves and things like that, radiation, environmental things, clinical toxicology, antidotes, things like that. So it's kind of a pretty wide coverage. I've heard that it's a bit harder than the ABT exam. So, it's definitely something that is a challenge, but would be rewarding to be able to say, you're a double boarded toxicologist. So that is what I'm hopefully will be doing soon. Yeah, so there's the smarty cat there. And then as far as what you can do after you become a veterinary toxicologist or a toxicologist, so there's lots of different options. I guess this is interesting because it can be like a non-traditional career path. You don't have to be, just in a clinic every day doing clinical stuff. You can do lots of different things. So there's clinical toxicology, which is kind of kind of a hybrid of what I do. So, I'm speaking to clinics every day on the phone, talking about how to manage toxicology and exposures and, how to treat this and what to do, what to expect. Some people work in a university setting with clinical toxicology. So they're, seeing patients in front of them and treating them and advising what to do. There's lots of industry and regulatory jobs as a toxicologist. So basically you're looking at the safety of things and setting standards. You can work at a drug company and investigate, if they want to market a new drug and they want to make sure this ingredient is safe, they, have you look it up and make a report and figure out if it's okay. You can work for pet food companies, setting standards for things like how much vitamin D is safe to put in a pet food, so things like that. You can work at a diagnostic lab. There are lots of environmental organizations that you can work at, even out in the field where you're setting standards for things like the safe level of a certain kind of gas in the environment, or just all kinds of different things. Then you can also work for the government in kind of same capacities. There's also the academic side of things. So you can do research, you can teach. Probably a lot of people do kind of a mixture of all these things, or they do multiple things like this. So you can have your hand in lots of different kinds of pies to really put your tox knowledge to use. So I know a lot of people do clinical, they also do research. They might, be a consult person for a pet food company. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can do with tox that's not your typical, clinic job. So that's also something that's very neat, I think, about being a toxicologist. So you're not locked into one specific role. I think that's all that I have. So if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to email me. There's my email address there. Happy to talk about anything. And that's my dog Tyrion after he got his first pup cup, and it looked like it blew his mind. So thought that is, hopefully I haven't blown your mind, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you about it. So thank you for listening, and hope you guys have a good rest of your day.